Hello. I love Super Nintendo. I eat, sleep and live everything SNES. I love Super Nintendo. Now, with the huge success that the original Donkey Kong Country game became on Super Nintendo, a sequel was imminent. Only 1 year after the release of the original game on SNES, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest was released. Nintendo took an obvious, if it ain't broke then don't fix it approach with this game, and created an experience that is very similar to the original. A couple of add-ons and a bit of tweaking aside, the two games are very similar. The game continues where the previous one ended. Donkey Kong has been kidnapped by King K. Rool, and it is up to Diddy and his girlfriend Dixie to save the day. Familiar faces make an appearance, such as Cranky Kong, Rambi the Rhino, and Squawks the Parrot, who now has a far bigger role to play. Diddy and Dixie are also joined by some new characters, such as Wrinkly Kong, Swanky Kong, Rattly the Rattlesnake, and Glimmer the Anglerfish. Once again, the game focuses on team play, allowing for two players to team up, and each player is a different character. However, new to the game is the fact that some areas are only accessible by one of the characters, or it requires you to have both characters in your party to make it to certain bonus rooms. It's a nice addition that you don't notice was lacking in the original until you play this game. Almost everything that made the original Donkey Kong Country game a success is back in heap loads. The graphics are better than ever, the soundtrack is fantastic, and the gameplay is enjoyable and doesn't take itself too seriously. Donkey Kong Country 2 has closely borrowed from the original game, but this is in no way a bad thing. The minecart ride has been replaced with a number of roller coaster rides, which are more challenging but just as fun. The swimming levels are back, although now they often provide extra challenges. There is a feeling that the developers really looked at what was popular in the first game before producing this game. New features include far more emphasis on bonus levels and bonus areas. At the end of each level is a target. Hit it with enough force and you get a prize. Some of them are easy, whereas some require more thought. The bonus areas themselves have had a makeover as well. Rather than now just being extra rooms, many of them have objectives which you need to fill in. In some, you need to collect a certain amount of stars, kill a certain amount of enemies, or find a token. These tokens are used to unlock other areas of the game. Also dotted around the levels are coins. The coins can be spent on various places. You can use them to unlock bonus games, get hints on hidden areas in the levels, and even save. This is a nice feature that adds extra challenge to the game. Rather than being able to save whenever you needed, as long as you had access to a save point, like in the first game, you now also need enough coins. And what about the bosses? In my original Donkey Kong Country review, I stated that the bosses in the later levels were a little bit unoriginal, they just recycled their old ideas. Well, I'm happy to say that for Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest, this problem has been rectified. The bosses are original, challenging, and they feel like far more time has been spent on them than last time. Now, there are a couple of things that don't sit comfortably with me in this game. However, there is one that needs to be addressed right away. To say this is a Donkey Kong Country game, where's Donkey Kong? I understand that the story called for him, but this is the second game in the series, only the second. Okay? If you want to remove him later. If you're talking about the second game, it needs Donkey Kong. Why didn't they just start by calling the first game Diddy Kong Country? Wouldn't have been a problem then. But no, if it's called Donkey Kong Country 2, you need Donkey Kong. Simple as. Instead of Donkey Kong, you get Dixie Kong, Diddy's girlfriend. Dixie can run fast, jump high, and use her ponytail as a helicopter to float to safety and grab onto hooks. So basically, she's Diddy with a helicopter move. Now, doesn't this make Diddy useless? Yes. The beauty about having two characters to control in the first game was that they were both so massively different. If you needed to jump higher, you picked a Diddy. If you wanted raw power, Donkey was the Kong for you. However, there is less of a distinction this time between the two characters. Diddy Kong is basically Dixie without the helicopter move, making him less useful. So, why would you ever choose to play as him? You still get the option to switch between characters, so Diddy becomes a safety net rather than a useful part of the game. The final point to make with this game is less a criticism and more an observation. The difficulty for Donkey Kong Country 2 has been upped a notch or two. Whereas the original was tough in places, you never felt like you were being unfairly treated. You always felt that if you died, it was because you sucked at the game. However, this game is so much more tougher, it almost feels like you're being unfairly treated at times. Sometimes you can't help but wonder that maybe the reason you died wasn't because of your own lack of experience, but more because the game has it in for you. There is very little to be said for this game that wasn't said in the original Donkey Kong review. The game is fun, challenging, the soundtrack is once again fantastic, and the graphics are incredible. To think that this game came out 15 years ago. The extra bonus rounds make this game less of a quick cash-in and more of its fully fledged title that it deserves to be. Now, the real question that's burning at many of your minds, I'm sure, is which is better, Donkey Kong Country or Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest? As this game feels more like a continuation of the story rather than its own separate title, it's very difficult to decide between the two. Many fans of the series feel that the second one is actually far superior than the original. Personally, I tend to go the other way. I think that the omission of Donkey Kong in this game, as well as the extra challenge, might segregate some fans from the original. However, how can you really separate two fantastic games? It's far too difficult for me. Trying to give it a score, do I go higher than Donkey Kong Country and stick with most fans? Or do I go with my gut instinct and give it a couple of points less than Donkey Kong Country? Well, for this one, I've decided that, drumroll, thank you, I am going to go for a complete and utter cop-out and give this game 96%, the exact same score that the original got. Cowardly? Yeah, a little bit. But I don't care. I'm not being funny, but if you want to play one or the other, get them both. Either one you choose, you're not going to be disappointed, but you'll play the original and you'll think that you probably need the second one anyway. And same goes to the second one. Play the second one first, you'll probably want the original in your collection as well. So why don't you just save yourself some time and some effort and get them both. Probably get them quite cheap on eBay, to be honest. Have a look. Yeah, now, I've got nothing much else to say, really. Just go on. While you're on. In fact, you can still listen to my voice. Okay? Open a new window. ebay.co.uk, ebay.com if you live overseas. Just have a look. Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Country 2, SNES. You'll find yourself a nice little title there. Either way, you'll be happy. Yeah, I hope you're doing that now. Yeah, good. The release of Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Nintendo Wii is ever looming closer, and with that we still have one more Donkey Kong Country game on the Super Nintendo 2 review. So, make sure you come back in a few days' time to find out what the Super Nintendo fanboy thinks of Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. See you there.